anything, just realize you're a part of that process too. So any questions you have, make sure to ask about the bills that you're seeing being paid and those types of things. So again, but overall, very good controls. But because of the segregation inherent to the size of your organization, we do have that listed as an item. Again, no compliance findings with government auditing standards. And then on page 75 is a report on Minnesota legal compliance. And again, this is a limited scope look at select statutes that the Office of the State Auditor provides a checklist to us to look at. There were no findings applicable to our legal compliance guide specifically. So as a result, there's nothing to report there in the Minnesota Legal Compliance Audit Guide. And again, it's fairly limited scope, but it looks at some of your bidding requirements, it looks at some of your deposits, things in that, collateralization of deposits and the investments that you invest in. So again, nothing to report there. And again, that's on page 75 of the document. There is also the smaller document, which is a communications letter. There's some required communication in the financial analysis, which I'm going to walk through here briefly with you as a council. But again, as far as the required communication, nothing to report there. Everything is very much in order. We receive full cooperation of your staff from our audit procedures. Obviously, our procedures were a little bit different because of the remote environment we worked in, but really very, very efficiently done. We appreciate Marty and Judy. $1,324,475. That is an increase from last year's $1,276,000. Expenditures were up significantly, $895,382 to $1,255,354. And really the driver there, which we'll see on another slide, is some capital outlay for a fire truck, several hundred thousand for that. So fund balance, which takes your revenues minus your expenditures and minus your transfers. There were some transfers out this year as well. So the fund balance was $1,475,046, which is about 14 months of your operating expenditures of $1,255,354. Of that total fund balance, the unassigned component, which is in the audit book, which is more your discretionary balance, if you want to say, $1,178,207, and that is about 11 months of operating expenditures. So your policy says a minimum of 50%. Your unassigned is at about 11 months, or almost 100%, and then the overall is 14 months. So you've exceeded your minimum fund balance in those categories. And really, from just a quick side note, it could be a very important thing as we're hearing the tax collections at the county level for the taxpayers has been slowed due to the COVID outbreak. So as a result, you may need more of your fund balance to kind of temporarily keep your cash flow going until those are collected, because there could be definitely a delay in capturing some of those tax collections. You could expect the tax delinquencies maybe to rise a little bit as well for hopefully for a temporary period of time. So again, 5-year analysis there, just a real quick look. Increased revenues, increased expenditures. Your fund balance has grown from about $958,000 to $1,475,000. Actually dipped a little bit from 2018 to 2019, but still very healthy balance. So I think you should be very pleased with those financial statistics. Go to the next slide for me, Marty, please. So general fund revenues, again, a little deeper dive here. Did mention that the revenues are up about $48,000 to $1,324,000. Your tax levy or tax revenue is very consistent, $920,000 compared to $918,000. Biggest driver was a miscellaneous category, up from $42,000 up to about $94,000, $94,819. Reimbursements and investment income. Investment income has been significantly higher in all of our audits this year, just due to the market being able to generate a higher rate of return. And then you did have some reimbursements that caused the increase there. When you look back at that line item over the 5 years, you do see sometimes you're in that $95,000 to $100,000 range. Others, it's in the $30,000 to $40,000, so not atypical. Back in 2016, you had a little higher miscellaneous revenue stream as well. So overall, very consistent revenues. Intergovernmental is about $221,000. I believe the local government aid is about $195,000 of that. So obviously that's something the state legislature will be probably looking at as they try to balance their budget as to where those levels might be. But just to give you a quick snapshot, that $195,000 was the local government aid of revenue for 2019. Again, very consistent with 2018. Next slide just looks at some general fund expenditures. Again, $1,255,354 was the total expenditures. That's up $359,972 from prior years. And again, if you look at the composition on the bottom, you do see your capital for the fire truck increased significantly. Your capital outlay was almost $300,000 in the general fund for 2019. The major driver again for the increase. Also some increase in public works and public safety. Public works was related to some snow and gravel, snow removal, some gravel. Public safety more to siren, radio repairs, and some maintenance. So again, we'll kind of look at it where it comes on budget, and again you were within your budget with one minor exception on the expenditure side. So again, living within your means there, and obviously you had planned for the capital outlay disbursement for the fire truck. So with that, we'll go to the next slide, and I'll just kind of capture that budget and actual results. So again, as you're well aware, about this time of year, you'll probably start thinking about the 2021 budget. So back up a couple years and look where the 2019 original budget was. There was a final budget amendment for some expenditures. Those are the first two columns. The actual amounts are shown there in the third column, and then the variance with the final, whether you're positive or negative. Overall revenues were $128,000, or about 9.7% over budget, and a vast majority of that was the miscellaneous, which is the reimbursements and the investment income. However, your charges for services, license and permits, intergovernmental, and assessments were all slightly over budget. And your taxes were actually slightly under budget just due to the delinquent taxes that you budget for the full levy. You don't collect all of that in the current year, so there was a slight amount under there, but overall a nice healthy increase of 9.7% over budget on the revenue side. Overall expenditures were $84,914 under budget, and general government, public safety, and culture and recreation were all under budget. The fire component was down in public safety. For public works, you were just slightly over budget, about $17,765, just due to some maintenance costs there. So just wanted to point that out. And then finally, on the very bottom of this, you do show that you do budget a transfer out of the general fund, and you did transfer out approximately what you budgeted. Budget was $161,000, and it came in at $160,537. So overall, the bottom line, you had projected a change in fund balance, a drop of $305,000. You were much better than that. It came in at a drop of $88,880, so a positive variance of $216,000. The reason why you kind of maintained your fund balance level from 2018. So very nice work there. Going to shift gears and in the next slide and just talk about the water and sewer funds. So again, those are designed to be self-supporting with user fees, designed to capture resources to reinvest within the water and sewer fund operations, and that's through the mechanism of funding some or all of the depreciation. The water fund revenues and expenditures were actually fairly consistent this year. The revenues were down about $6,000 to just under $152,000. Operating expenses were up slightly, $154,000, but really about in the middle of the 3-year period range there. You did have a small loss with depreciation, $2,499. When you back out your depreciation, there was a surplus, if you want to say, of $56,968. So you're funding about 96% of your depreciation in the water fund, which is a good thing. However, there's also some other things you need to look at, like debt service, principal, and interest payments, which we'll look at on the next slide here. And you are also capturing a fairly significant amount of non-operating revenues in the water fund, and that's relating to some water tower rent and some special assessments, and that was $68,327. So overall, the cash position in the water fund is about $401,000, and that was an increase of about $105,808 this year. So that's a good sign. If we flip to the next slide, then I'll just want to show you a little bit more from a cash perspective. And really, as I mentioned, that second from the bottom line shows that the cash did increase $105,000 after paying your principal and interest payments through operations. The point I'd like to make here is that if you back out, take that net change in cash and back off the antenna rent and the miscellaneous revenues, and then the transfer in, which is about $84,000 each year, so roughly $165,000 negative off the positive 105, you can kind of see that there is technically a net loss without any transfers or the miscellaneous rent and revenue of about $66,580. So technically it's not self-supporting because of the transfers in, and you could argue that the antenna rent and the miscellaneous revenue is not a user fee, but is really just another revenue that's being captured in the water fund. So again, I know you've been looking at the rate structures. You did make some changes to that. So again, hopefully that'll make it so it's not quite as reliant on those transfers and the antenna rent and things like that.
So Steve?
Yes.
With the increase in the water rates that we have initiated this year, and we only started billing second quarter, what is that going to do for us?
Well, that'll certainly have a positive effect. Obviously, you may need a full year's capture, if you want to say, to really show the true impact of that. So I would expect to see improvement for fiscal 20. You may not see the entire improvement until fiscal 21 when you have a full year's capture of that particular rate increase. But I know talking with Marty, there was a rate structure. You kind of looked at where those things needed to be. So again, if those assumptions are correct, that should have definitely a positive impact in kind of making the user fees themselves kind of being self-sustaining into the
break even
fund. Theoretically, yes. And again, we'll certainly be reporting that as we go along. Kind of maybe can even do a little more of an extrapolation for 2020 to say, yeah, with 9 months you had it this. If you would have had the full 12,
right?
Oh, okay. Been, this much to say, yeah, you would have been spot on, or it might a little more or a little less, and we can kind of walk through that.
Okay, thank you.
So, you're welcome. Next slide is just looking at the sewer operations, and then I'll close for any other questions you may have. So again, sewer fund is a very capital intensive operation, so you do have large amounts invested in your plant and equipment. So there's a large depreciation charge every year for that. But again, industrial usage was down, so the operating revenues did decline to about $256,000 from $313,000. And again, pretty consistent with 2017 and 2016. Your operating expenses actually went down about $31,000 this year, which is a good sign, to $562,000. So and most of that was repair and maintenance related. So you did have a loss when you fully load the depreciation of $306,343. And actually, when you add the depreciation back of about $288,000, you still had a loss of about $19,718. Again, the non-operating revenues, again, a similar situation here, the $121,000. Investment income is about a third of it, assessments about a third, and then refunds and reimbursements about another third of that $120,000. So again, cash position in the sewer fund is about $1.4 million. That did go down about $227,000. And if you flip to the last slide, then I'll just kind of walk you through that as well to kind of show you, in fact, kind of that net change in cash over the last 5 years. So this really just takes cash flows in, revenues in, cash in minus the expenses you pay, and then you have to pay your debt service principal and interest that you pay on your PFA loans, and then the property taxes and the assessments that are collected, and then the interest and dividends received. So here again, down about $227,000 and $72 for 2019. A little bit higher than 2018, a little bit lower than 2017. But again, as you see the last 4 years, and you add all those up, a significant decline in the cash position. So there again, Councilor Becker, that would be that rate structure or that rate increase would hopefully mitigate that drop in those cash reserves that you've been seeing the last 4 years.
That would be great.
Because this one has been going down fairly significantly, and it's really, a lot of it's just due to the fact of the debt service payments that due, on the to PFA on the infrastructure. So hopefully we'll have at least some clarity on how it's working next year as we talk and go from there. So with that, we will be filing the books obviously with the state auditor as required, and we'll just get those electronically out to them. Just want to thank Marty and Judy for all their help this year. Again, kind of a unique year. Hopefully we're back on site bothering them in person instead of through electronic means, but again, appreciate all the help they did for us. And with that, I'll just close and say thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. If there's anything in the audit books that you might want me to go through more or clarify, happy to do so.
Well, it wasn't a popular move when we had to jack up water and sewer rates, but we had, I mean, it hasn't been done since the 90s, I believe. And the city's just been taking a kicking on it, so.
Yeah, there's kind of two camps. That either you do a consistent increase of 3, 4, 5%, or you hold it, and then all of a sudden you got to get it at some point, and it's not a popular move. But obviously it was well needed as you look at the cash flow of the sewer funds. So yeah.
Any other comments, questions that you have,
I just want to thank Steve for what you guys did, especially under the circumstances. And I definitely want to give a thanks to Marty and Judy and Debbie for all the hard work that you guys do. I know this is a hard time, and you guys do a phenomenal job, and I just want to say thank you.
Can I piggyback on that, Mr. Mayor? You got to give the finance clerk, Judy New, 100% of the credit. Okay, 99% of the credit, and Debbie are phenomenal. They do an awesome job for the city, and Steve will attest to this. Not to have any findings other than what lack of segregation of duties. I mean, that's a
standard.
Unless you want to give me 3 more people to help me out, and we'll leave Judy alone. But I could use 3 more in my office. So.
Please convey that on to Judy too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they did, I think, a good job in that lack of segregation. As long as I've been on the council, we've had that. So, I mean, we're doing something right. We don't have any problems there. I think they're doing a good job.
Okay. Mr. Tipple, any comments?
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to accept the year-end audit.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded, and Steve, thank you. Before we leave it, if you allow us, we'll quick call the question here in short order. Any other comments or questions as it relates to the resolution 2020-23 acceptance of the year-end budget? Now at the time, any additional comments, dialogue? I sense we call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Passed unanimous. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
You bet. And we'll have a representative available next year from the council to work with you on that effort besides staff. Okay, we are now down to departments. Lieutenant Hemmich, Mr. Please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We provided you with 40 hours of police services for the month of May, and looking at the report here, it's a nice and boring report. I don't see anything really jumping out at me on anything. You see a dog or an animal complaint, and that's just a deer on the highway. The burning thing was during the burning ban, and we had the people extinguish it. There's not anything really jumping out at me. There's no burglary. There's one little theft that was unfounded of more of a behavioral health problem. Some of the other problems that we had as far as involving law enforcement, again, involved behavioral health with some individuals, but otherwise we do not have a lot of things going on. We did stop several vehicles, and several subjects were cited for either not having a valid driver's license or shouldn't have even been driving because of not having a license or being revoked or suspended. And a couple of people driving in the area a little too fast. But otherwise, I fortunately do not have anything really exciting for you. You guys were able to review the calls for service, and if you have any questions on any of them, I can try to answer that, but otherwise, nice and quiet.
Questions of the tenant as it relates to day-to-day operations, law enforcement in our community? Well, that was a visual aid. That was an added value. Thank you very much. Okay.
That'd be Wednesday night pager test.
Oh, yes.
Got a question for you. With all the different addresses within the city, do you guys experience problems locating on your emergency calls or whatever? Because we've got Kimball address, St. Cloud address, Wake Park address, St. Joe address. Does that give you guys a problem sometimes to pinpoint where you're supposed to go?
With Rockville, it usually doesn't happen at all. We do have, just the only reason I'm thinking of this is last week there was a call on Washburn, and there's a Washburn in Painesville, and there's a Washburn in Belgrade. So there was a confusion there for a tiny bit. But otherwise, no, with our mapping services and with the layout of our 911 addressing, we really don't have much of an issue of getting to places. And again, Rockville is not fragmented and enough where some areas where there's a complete no access across, but no, we don't really have problems with. Is there a problem with a delay of time, or I guess I'm not sure.
Well, there's been issues with the 911 calls within the city where, for instance, my address, if you Google or GPS my address, you'll end up in Cold Spring. And we've had different...
Just because it went to the dead end road or the change of the highway?
Just because of my address being Cold Spring, and there's the same street number and everything in Cold Spring, so...
And zip code oriented, I think, to a degree.
Not much for our mapping services. I mean, if it pops up, it should come up still as Rockville as far as an address.
Well, if you GPS it as Rockville, you're fine, but if you GPS the address...
But as far as a phone call coming in, your address from a phone call should come into still the city of Rockville proper.
It will come in Rockville?
It sent our department to Cold Spring. Page came with just a physical address, not a name, and GPS to it. Interesting enough, Cold Spring, because of the going to do a page out, attached to Rockville.
Which call was this?
That's a couple years.
It was on the 3rd of July.
Stearns County 911 person took care of it. He went into.
It was
Because
last
anytime
year.
we do have any conflicts or any...
Yes, actually, I've had it in my
Correct.
neighborhood. It's happened 3 times. Twice with ambulances and 1 with fire department, where they couldn't locate.
I know initially we had the problem with the new highway and then Broadway being where it was old highway, and we had some confusion there, but I was unaware of anything in the last year or 2.
Okay.
I think it's some USPS and some of those type of things. So there's several different databases that are out there, and if it's Googling and different ones. But rather than, and that's a good question, Jerry. It's really one of those things that we've never finished yet in Rockville, and it is. I think that's one of our goals to get that cleaned up. But it's going to take some time, and we have a lot of effort, and this Cobalt thing really stopped a lot of stuff. It's an enormous amount of work.
I know our mapping services for sometimes are up by Avon. It'll put us 185th Street will put us south of town, where it's actually up by Pelican Lake Ballroom. So, and we've had those corrected when we've got them on the mapping, but I was unaware of anything saying.
Can you pull that mapping service up on your phone now if I give you an address? Will it tell
That
you?
mapping service? No, that's our county map. I don't have that on my phone right now, but we use the county GIS, and we use Geocom for some of our mapping services. But we can send me an email and we'll look at all of that to just make sure it's all okay.
Well, I'll probably be talking to you more as we
Okay.
proceed with this, yeah.
Yep.
Any other
'Cause
questions?
I'd like to get both sides of the story, so.
Any other comments, questions? as it relates to law enforcement in the city of Rockville? Thanks again for your
Thank
special.
you for your duty.
Yes. That's great when we have limited need for your resources. It's really great for a community.
I like to be able to do the reports where I am able to say that it's boring and there's not a rash of thefts, there's not a rash of harassment or burglaries or other problems in your community. So it was.
So if we defunded the department like some people wanted to do, what would we do with this list of stuff that you just brought us?
Yeah, good luck.
Sheriff Department as it relates to law of Minnesota, law enforcement in the city of Rockville is one of the best bangs for the buck we've ever had, or something like that. So there's no doubt about it.
I will be able to comment as far as to say that it is still Minnesota nice for most of the areas around here. We still get the thank yous and that, so it's comforting that way during this rougher time for law enforcement.
Well,
Don't get discouraged.
yeah, we continue to see success with you guys over there. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us continue, please, should we? Thanks again. Planning Commission, Bill.
Planning Commission, we have one item on the agenda tonight. This is a variance request. The applicant is Northern Natural Gas Company. The owners are Donald and Marlis Eichmeyer, 24992 Half Man Road in the city of Rockville. It's just southwest side of Glacier Road near the intersection of Half Man and Glacier. The variance request is to install a new 50 by 100 foot chain link fence, approximately 52 feet from Glacier Road center line. Property is zoned Ag 40. Property contains 125 acres. Safety and security fence to secure the pig receiver, and I think there's a picture of it in your
Packet, yeah.
packet. Will help reduce negative impact on tillable acres. We did hold a public hearing. Nobody did speak. The owners were at the public hearing asking some questions. The Planning Commission is recommending approval with a letter of intent which we received from them, that if there's any road work done, that they widen that road, they have to take that fence down, and they have agreed to that.
Would be number 3 of the resolution.
Oh,
And we are on page 167 and several pages thereafter for the public that might be, we're watching it mainstreamed here with all of the stuff that came through on the audit report.
I was going off my Planning Commission packet. Where's the resolution, you guys?
Here, let me just,
Okay. Number 3 is what is being requested, is stipulated that there should be future road construction improvements that would require temporary relocation of chain link fence that is in the road right of way. It is Northern Natural Gas Company's financial responsibility to temporarily relocate said fence due to their occupation within the road right of ways, and they have agreed to do that. So we're recommending approval.
okay, thank you, Bill. Any questions before we go further? A motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion's been made in a second. Bill, there's a structure out there, and so it makes no damn difference. But what is it that needs to be done out there? Just modification or modern?
They need to add a pig receiver along the same line. They need to add
so
that.
it's the same gas line. It's just modifying it and adjusting
Yep.
it. Okay. And it's a fence, and it appears that there's just one exit or one dark driveway off of Glacier, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Well, great. Comments, questions from our planning and zoning? Sensing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of that motion to advance 2020-24, granting the right-of-way variance on Northern National Gas. All those in favor of that motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Abstentions, none. Passed unanimous. That's it, Bill?
That's it.
Okay. We are now at department's number C. And there is a fire department report that was written and circulated to us. It's just an FYI, so it does not appear that we need council action. Any comments, questions? Mr. Bodie, anything from you on your end?
My only concern is that, and it's not just here, but I'm sure it's all law enforcement, EMS, shortage of protective gear.
Yes. And that was...
It's gonna be like toilet paper, it'll catch up.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that as a pun.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. You're right. And that was conveyed, and hopefully Rodney there's some back-ordered stuff and things of that nature. Okay, so if that is complete, we have opted to not have an emergency management report because Mike is not here, so that D was canceled. Public Works, this is under 10E as an elephant, resolutions 2020-25, awarding quote, and this would be on council action, page 188 in the packet. There is a resolution that is advanced to us, correct?
Yes.
Oh, there was a quote, and I think it warrants a little bit of discussion. Quite frankly, with the COVID-19 dilemma, and this is my personal view, that there's a lot of funds that will probably not coming through from the League of Minnesota Cities and sales tax and all of that good stuff. And I know that we had budgeted a certain amount of money for putting in gravel, and this is the gravel quote, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, the feeling of the council members, candidly here, do we need to go ahead with that this year, or with the uncertainty, and we had a fairly large increase in taxes last year, and if we don't really need, I'm just bringing this up, if we don't need to have that, what would be stopping us from just stalling the whole project for a year and then see how it goes, and then next year it'll go back out again? Jerry, I'm just going to pick on you. I know that you were one of the individuals that said, do we really need to gravel all those roads? I'm hoping you see the validity in this, and I think that would be a unique way, and I'm not trying to do it, but other discussion. It's hard for me to read at this point the feeling, but that's just my reaction.
I think first of all, we need two quotes.
Yes.
Or secondly, we put it off a year, but either or.
Well, we wouldn't need two quotes because it's below the amount, but going back to if I can just, the root question, the root question, do we need to or do we not? And if we don't, then let's just have a motion to defer any action on this resolution until another time certain when it's brought back up again. That's the easiest way to get it off of our agenda and be acted on it, that it takes council action. Otherwise,
Well, first of all, on this quote, it's got a total of 84,000 on the bottom. That's not the two of them together,
There's two
No, one
quotes
or-
there.
one or the
is an
other, yeah.
alternate, and one is the base.
but it would either be one or the other.
Yes, sir.
And it says Mitchell Lane or Agate Beach. It should be saying Mitchell Lane
Sure.
and Agate
That's a
Beach.
typo.
All right, yeah, at the very least, I guess I would ask if we could at least postpone it for a month and maybe I haven't driven the road, I don't know how bad it is. What's the road committee feel about it? Have they looked at it?
It could most certainly wait till next year without a problem.
No, I would sort of be in favor of that.
well, thank you, Brian, that means a lot. Roads, and if you can say we could go and limp it along for another year or something like that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Probably wonder if money wouldn't be well spent if we took some of this and used it for chemical treat to hold our good roads together
Yeah.
a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's a day-to-day operation, and it's flowing there. So unless somebody else, I'm going to try it. I'll make a motion that we
I'll make one comment.
Oh, go ahead, Donnie.
Like the Bill said, I'd like to see in most of these, one quote, something depending on it's fine, but I'd like to see two quotes, and also at the grading the roads. I haven't driven out there basically lately since early this spring, but the roads like with the blading we're doing now are staying with and the dust treatment are they're in darn good shape in my opinion. If that gravel can wait, another year, you can baby it through. I know some other, the townships having the same issue. We're gonna have to wait for our funding a little more before we do it, throw it out another year.
It's a healthy price, and if we can not, and just because it was budgeted, doesn't mean we have to spend it. And so I'll take that, I'll make a motion that we postponing any activity on resolution 2020-25 and awarding of that quote to a time certain when either the RTU brings it to our administrator and the administrator circulates it back to us. So that's my
Second
motion.
that.
Could I just ask that be
Sure, please.
indefinitely?
Postpone to a time certain, and it's to a time certain when Mr. Bodie, not next month or something like that, to a time certain when Mr. Bodie gets the pressure or needs that from the right group, and that's the RTU, or reviewing, not just because one taxpayer pays and says, I need my road, and that doesn't do it. It takes a system. So that's the motion. Hopefully a second?
I did second that.
Yeah. Continue, Brian?
Discussion, wouldn't it be better, because of what Donnie and Bill said, if you're not gonna do it, just reject the bid and throw it out, and then if you're gonna do it in a time certain later, because if it's 6 months down the road or next year, this price is gonna change.
Yes, of course.
So just
That's why we're not acting on the awarding of the thing. That's what that motion is for, is to postpone any action.
postponing it, then this is leaving this on the table.
Okay, then to postpone indefinitely, so no action will be taken on that quote, and we'll be asking for additional or another round.
Bid levy?
Yep.
Okay.
That's, yes.
You're okay to the friendly amendment to deny the quote and postpone the project.
To a time certain of
Yeah.
next year.
That-
Yep,
that
that's
would be-
great. That clears it up. Yep. Okay, any other discussion? And Mr. Bodie, you have a clear understanding what this is all about? Great. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Passed unanimous.
I'd like to ask a few questions of Public Works. Apparently, there's been some issues with our blacktopping. Can we get an update on that?
Well, it's not the blacktopping, it's the air patching machine that we rent in with Cold Spring in Richmond. And this year, air patching caused some consternation amongst maybe 10, 12 different residents. And the explanation I got from Public Works is that the oil that we received this year, which is a water-based oil, was looser and thinner than historically what we received. And so it did rain within a number of hours after he applied the air patching, and the oil ran. I went and looked at it, Dwayne looked at it, I think Bill did, and we all agree that it shouldn't have happened, and we'd like to not have had it happen. You know, I certainly understand the residents that had to clean their vehicles. I had to clean mine as well. Okay, let me correct that. My wife had to clean ours as well.
Well, I can believe that part.
Okay.
Is this where we get our product from every year, or?
To bring that up, you know,
It would-
that's,
If you want us to do more training, we can certainly send the guys to get somebody out here to train on air patching. Even if it's loose, then maybe more grit is required on top.
I think we should do that.
But it also, when you do it, if the oil is thinner, you will not, a couple years ago I helped with some of that, the grit will not adhere. It's gonna water. It has to do with the thicker the oil. It's gonna like stick.
My point is this something you can determine before you put it down, or?
You have to put it, you have to get the oil and mixture out there. That'll tell you what, I know at Half Man right there was that dip, they filled that in. It really did a good job, except one side is like bleeding through. It looks a little thin, but it's holding up perfect. It's a little weird, but that was one of the best moves they did when they air patched that dip in the road there.
I talked with Gene because I got calls and complaints on this, and I followed up with them. And then I met with Gene on another issue out on the road. And he had brought it to MnDOT's attention where they got the stuff from. And they said, yes, they got a bad batch of oil that they didn't know it was bad till they started using, they had the same issue. So since then, they've corrected it. So, and like Marty alluded to when I was up, that is the only place that Gene said that we're locally that we can get it from.
Well, I don't mean to put the monkey on our maintenance people's back, but I guess I'm in favor of training if they want it. So if that's a question, I'm all for it.
Well, the air patching machine, if we're specifically honing in on that, and that's owned by the 3 cities, and was there ever proper orientation done for all 3 cities? Certainly here in Rockville with different public relations and stuff like that, and then subordinates that are in there, you know, is there proper training of, because that's a special kind of a unique way, the air patch tar instead of the old conventional way. And so all of us, maybe it'll take all of us to understand it and have a little bit of a demo out here, some of that. But I think that's logically, because, and I'm going to be bold here, I think I could have gone down to a local box store, found some tar, poured it out there, ran out, and it finds its own level or something like that. But the grit, I think that's the component that I see missing. So irrelevant if it's runny or not, but it's the grit portion of it that was not added. And the important thing that I heard from this is that our administrator confronted or chatted with our public works, and so our public works person is aware of it, and a written report back to us that says, what are we doing to change our procedure? And if that's training, we already gave a pretty good nudge to Mr. Bodie that says if that's what they need, we're willing to foot the bill to do it, because I don't have better things. We all have better things to do than to get constituency service, and it was on a weekend, and I too did enough of that. So that's what I think we're at.
Did Cold Spring experience the same issues?
I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that.
Well, just curious if...
Yeah.
You know, here's a good example. We cut the graveling, and let's take some of that money if it's going to help Public Works out, and if they're willing to get some help on that, or get some schooling or whatever, I think that's what we should be doing.
Any last comments from the council members? I'll yield to Mr. Bodie, just a quick comment or so.
If I could then, Mr. Mayor and council members, that address the air patching. We also received complaints on the patchwork. And I would like to comment, if I could, that we don't have the equipment that Stearns County, the state of Minnesota, or federal government does to do patchwork on the highways. The patchwork that they did, it's called tailgate spreading. In my opinion, they did a really good job. For the equipment they have, they did a good job with hot mix. It's not an easy job to let that fall freely from the truck and use the payloader to spread it out. And thanks to you, we now have a roller to pack it as of last year. But that's how we do our road patching. We don't have a machine to cut it out. Yeah. One of you suggested we could get a machine. Well, now there's another capital expenditure. There's another machine to run. You know,
You could rent that though.
Yeah.
but it's another machine.
No.
It takes 3 people to get the machinery out there now the way it is.
Bottom line, Lena Lane needs to be, you know, milled and overlaid and stuff like that, and we just limp along, and next year that's got to be the highest one.
To piggyback on what Marty said, is I did meet with Gene, that was why I was meeting with him. And I had expressed to him, when they're mixing tar, they're mixing base course, I'll get it all right.
Yeah.
And they don't mix wear course at the same time. It's one or the other. And the base course has got 1 inch minus grit in or rock in it. So when you're trying to put that over a hot piece of, or a cold piece of tar already, you can't get that rock to stick in. So it makes marbles and ends up with your tires. So I told Gene that you're going to have to coordinate when they're mixing tar, when they're doing fines, or when they're doing wear course, and get that, because it's finer grit and you don't have nearly that issue when you're trying to get it thin. And he thought that was probably a good idea.
And
There's a trick to every trade, and I guess that's where I'm going with this training thing.
Yeah.
Maybe other people have got shortcuts or something.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that part of it, but like I say, if they need some money spent to
Yeah.
learn the tricks of the trade a little better, a little easier, let's do it.
Yeah, Brian's right on with that comment that he made, and those are experts in that field. We had a lot of free information that I got from people that have been in that industry. So enough said at this point. Let's continue, please, shall we? We have very few things that are left. I think we had council action under other, was COVID-19, that resolution that was advanced, and this is a directive that's coming through. The League of Minnesota Cities is targeting to have the 19th of June as cities to be prepared ready, and they're drafting resolutions. And so Mr. Bodie had, working with our legal counsel, has advanced one that is probably going to be pretty much universal. But if not, we don't have a meeting before that. The state would like to have it, and if this is not tweaked exactly right today, we can always modify it. But it's not been certain.
This is pretty standard.
Yeah.
I've seen about 3 or 4 of them. Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, and that is the community prepared, I lost mine right now, I apologize.
City of Rockville Preparedness Plan.
There you go, that's the motion that was made. Thank you again. So there's a motion from on floor, COVID-19 preparedness plan. You all have it brought to us. It was not circulated, it was just today advanced to us, and the timing sequence of waiting until July and so after the target date that the state has. So we'll go with that legal second to bill. That would be
Brian seconded it.
Oh, Brian did. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to advance the COVID-19 preparedness plan. Continued additional questions, comments?
Either that or we could just have a protest in the street.
Okay. That wasn't in the form of a motion or a second, so therefore, okay. Other relevant questions as it relates to the item on the agenda here? Sensing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of COVID-19 preparedness plan, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. And the abstentions, passed unanimous. Thank you. City Hall siding, and there is a proposal that was presented to us, what's the wishes of the council as it relates to that proposal? Maybe just a little background. Who's spearheading? Is that Jerry or is that you, Mr. Bodie?
Both sides.
Yes.
What prepared, or here, I found it.
Do you have the samples?
Right here, these are you want these?
Yeah. We've got a bid from Schlungen Construction. We've got a leak in the small conference room over there on the roof. And apparently they have to take the, I don't know if you'd want to call it siding or whatever, off the exterior wall. And if you do that, it can't be reused. And we've got options of, you put something up there that you have to repaint, but being the rest of the building is all maintenance free, the suggestion was made to put some steel up. So we've got a bid here for $3,629 to do the job, pending on anything that's rotten once he takes the siding off on the bottom. But other than that, I would ask that maybe we would go with the closest matching steel to the building as we can, and ask Mr. Schlungen to replace whatever he takes off with steel.
Could I ask him to work in color with staff? I'm thinking Debbie's got a pretty good grip on color coordinations.
Yeah, whatever comes the closest, I would say.
Yes.
Let's go with it, right?
What kind of steel is it? I mean, I don't mean...
It's Staccato
It'd
board.
be pole barn steel is what he indicated to me.
It's gonna be pole barn steel?
That's what it won't be siding, it would be sheets of steel.
You okay with that on this really fine, nice building?
Well, the upside of it is if the studs match and you can just screw it on, and if there's still a problem, it's easy to take off. Siding, you've got to match in a little closer.
Well, I'm not real comfortable with putting pole barn steel up there, just not.
before we get to that point, great discussion, by the way, and that is the scope of work needs to be defined a little bit so that if we get a second quote, and Bill said, you know, we should get a second quote for this, I agree. This should also get a second quote, you know, so it's no different than, you know, getting others, minimum of 2, but there's got to be a scope of work. And after last month's meeting, we all just kind of, a few of us jutted out, kind of looked at it from this level. I did climb up there, and from my many years in the construction thing, I still have the schematics of when the building was built. I served on the EDA, and we had project managers, and that building, the architect on that building has a specific detail of how that thing is supposed to be put on. That's not how it was put on. It's a step flashing with riglet, and then maintenance, and it talks about the maintenance of the Staccato board. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe we have had limited maintenance, if at all. And so long term, yes, but another coat of paint over it or something like that, why was that ever put on there? Why didn't we go all granite? Because structurally it would have been impossible, and that's why it ended up being the Staccato board, and that's 4x8 sheets, and it wicks the water into it like a sponge if it's not properly painted. So even if it's not raining, you have that capability of moisture migrating into the Staccato board, into the substrate, the sheeting, and it takes a long time to come down, and it can port different places. That's why it just came out the least one. That's my professional opinion from the many years that I've been in the business. So before we go forward, I think we need to go and have someone that has the background capabilities. Architects do it all the time, stuff like that. It's a commercial building. It's a commercial building. You need to go and have, I think we need to have our building inspector just a token meeting with him and say, what is it that do we have to be worried about structural integrity that's been lost? You know,
Well, he did say that he will have the building inspector on site when he does the work.
Sure, you know, that's just my observation. Other discussions?
My personal opinion, Wayne, you can chime in, rather than putting the pole barn steel up there, I like the steel thing. Why can't you put like house roofing steel?
Horizontal rather than
Well,
you can put it up vertical,
Yeah.
but it's narrower stuff, and that still can come off.
well, yeah, I mean,
And it would look better than pole barn steel.
I can agree with what you're saying, but in the area that it's at, I bet you I could put a piece of yellow steel up there, and I could ask you in 6 months what's up there, and you tell me, geez, I don't know. But that's up to you.
Until you pointed it out, I didn't know what was there.
I know the stuff's gonna be a little bit more money, but I just, personally, I think it's gonna look
Yeah.
10 times better.
standing seal when one ties over and you have no fasteners showing?
Correct.
Yeah, that's logically what we should be doing on a commercial application like this. But the quote that was brought forward, and that's great, starting point, we're discussing it. Is it both sides, both the south side and the east side that this quote to it, or is it is both sides? So it'd be everything that's above the roof line of
It's
the
east and west
primary
sides.
No,
East and west.
East and south.
east and south, because there's granite on the north and there's granite on the west.
East and south. I think is correct.
What is
So it'd be
Two
above the
sides.
roof line, one of them has a valley coming, or a hip coming across, and the other...
Well, specifically, it was the east side that was leaking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it poured it out in the smaller thing.
So you want another bid, is that what you're saying?
I think we have to scope of work, write up a scope of work that everybody knows what they're bidding on it. If it's vertical, it's
We can get
horizontal.
another quote for your siding, Brian. Just tell me tomorrow what it is.
Yeah.
What do they call that stuff? It's just house steel stuff, roofing stuff.
Standing seam steel vertically on commercial, when you have the fasteners are hiding and then you hook it in, lap it over, and then you continue, and then you keep working across. And so,
Do we want to ask a professional, since this building looks this way?
the architect,
And
What does that
I
mean?
know where
Who's the-
you're going with that, and it's not a bad idea. The only thing is, it's gonna cost us some money.
well, sure it is.
Well,
but
a
it's gonna look-
professional did it in the first place, and we got a leak in here.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, times have changed, architecture's changed. We update it, let's update it. Building looks nice. I'm not qualified to tell you what to put on the side of a building. And I would argue with a few of you.
I'm not either, but I can tell you Mike Schlungen is, 'cause he's built a lot of nice houses.
Yes, he does.
You want another quote? We'll get another quote.
And no, and I'm not arguing that, Jerry. I'm just saying if we can change it now and modernize it, let's do it. Dick Schlungen can still put it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm not saying he specifically needs to, I just said, I found it kind of interesting that the whole building is maintenance-free, and then they put something like that on there that's gonna weep moisture in, doesn't make a lot of sense, but.
There was a reason at the time when it was created, and the EDA had a tough...
Let's not go back to that. Let's,
Okay.
So tell me what you want.
I'd like to get somebody in here,
You want an architect to look at it, commercial architect?
The last architect that we had on this one,
or a designer or whoever. Somebody.
I'll look into it.
I have a tough time picking out my clothes in the morning.
and then once the scope of work is created,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
have him go out and get request for proposal.
Then Mike's gonna have to
Sure.
resubmit and.
Yeah, and make sure that Mike's aware of that, Mr. Booty, if you would please, so that we don't lose somebody. We want to try to do it locally.
The best don't.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there any last comments? I heard you loud and clear, we're ready.
I just wanted to see the leak fixed.
Yeah, same here.
We have one last item, if we just defer for a second, and that is 2019 demographic report. It currently looks like we are at 2,593 based on last year's. So that's the demographic report for the state demography. 2,593.
Well, so we've actually gained back from what we lost then.
Well, and I think, when you think about it, lost my chain of thought, by the 400 Club, all those homes. Yeah, Brentwood. So the last true one was in 2010. The homes that we had in Countryside Edition were pretty well all built, but that's where most of them are in true attrition. So anyways, I think that's all that I have at this point. So you heard a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. It's non-debatable. All those in favor of that motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye. Thank you, gentlemen. We are adjourned.